Today we're gonna present to you the subject called History of Transformation in South Africa. The main topic that we're gonna focus on is decolonization of education in South Africa. According to Rivonia Naidu, when he defined decolonization, he says decolonization is the eradication of colonialist epistemologies and social practice in order to centralize Africa's own. So that takes us to our introduction to our topic. I will start our introduction by borrowing the words from our former president Nelson Mandela when he said, open quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world," close quote. Schools and universities are supposed to provide students with the necessary tools with which to survive the fourth industrial revolution. Technology has advanced exponentially since the turn of century, and calls have since been made for the abolition of socio-economic class hierarchy, which can be linked to the decolonization of curriculum and the culture of institution, as well as affordable access to quality education for all regardless of race. The decolonization of schools and universities involve people who were previously marginalized under apartheid, choosing to embrace and recognize their own culture, tell their own history, study from books written by Africans, and run institutions based on values that are reflective of African culture as opposed to Eurocentric models. Institutions, schools, and universities represent a macrocosm of society, and thus the decolonization of such institutions will begin the process of much broader transformation. Decolonization of education in South Africa. Challenges to decolonize the university curriculum will eventually affect the whole of South Africa. So now we're gonna discuss the challenges of decolonization of education. There are so many challenges that are coming into picture when we have to decolonize the education. But however, we are going to focus on only 5 challenges and go into details of each and every challenge stipulated. Our first challenge is no knowledge of decolonization. After 26 years of democracy in South Africa, our schools and universities tend to offer a view of a country that is rooted in colonial and apartheid thinking. The curriculum in universities remain largely westernized, more of a white Europe view of what should be included into our curriculum. Our second challenge is reluctant to change the curriculum. The decolonization projects need to encompass more than just changing the curriculum. How things are taught and lectures' attitude to this process matters just as much. While adding literature for the African continent and the global south is important in decolonization discussion, it is by far not enough. The attitude of university staff toward the continent used in curriculum is critical. Our third challenge is no connection with the realities of students. University need flexible and agentic lecture or staff who are connected to realities of students, and colonizing approach is lacking in locating alternative voice to inform the university curriculum. Within our schools and universities, decolonization of curriculums calls for the dismantling of Eurocentric epistemologies that continue to dominate, and the reawakening of indigenous knowledge. Our fourth challenge is problem with wide perspective. Decolonization is not merely a matter of political independence. To claim that colonial thinking stops having an impact on decolonized countries and its citizens is to misunderstand how deeply colonial thought affected colonized countries and their citizens. To overcome the legacy of colonialism, it is also necessary to decolonize the intellectual landscape of the country in question and ultimately decolonize the mind of the formerly colonized. Our last and fourth challenge is lack of dialogue. Another problem is that staff do not engage in proper dialogue regarding decolonizing the curriculum or which aspect, themes, or topics must be decolonized. Lagrange 2016 argues that decolonizing of curriculum entails a shift from Western or Eurocentric individualism and universalism to Ubuntu-infused curriculum, which acknowledges the independence of human and the modern human world. An Ubuntu-infused African-centered curriculum does not necessitate the destruction of dominant knowledge system, but rather demand a recent or interaction of African knowledge system into dominant epistemological discourse. According to Naidu 2017, knowledge does not necessarily have to emanate from Africa, but it must address the African realities. That takes us to our findings and discussion. Even though this study acknowledges that the colonization of higher education institution is a broad concept which entails some of the following: withdrawal of colonial names, removal of statues and symbols, curricular challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic transformation, overhauling of tertiary education funding models, and enhancing insourcing of workforce by tertiary institutions. Not all of these indicators of decolonization were employed by this study. Thus, the insight of educators in higher education institutions into the decolonization of higher education were looked at in terms of how National University of Lesotho lecturers conceptualize the decolonization of higher education institutions and their application of decolonizing principle to teaching and learning. Thus, this study focused on curriculum issues. Apart from definition of higher education institutions, focus was also placed on National University of Lesotho lecturers' perception about how the colonial curriculum should be transformed. Lastly, this discussion will zero on challenges related to the colonization of higher education institutions amid the COVID-19 pandemic. A total of 14 lecturers participated in the study, of which 9 were males, while 5 were females. So we concluded by making the recommendation. The recommendation that we came up with is that we have to fundamentally rethink our curriculum in order to move South Africa to the center of teaching and learning. There is a need to gain knowledge regarding the African continent, its history, culture, and civilization, and textbook must reflect indigenous knowledge. South Africa universities must start asking deep questions that examine what decolonization might look like in their teaching and how to achieve it. In order to understand ourselves in the West, whatever our heritage might be, there is a need to acknowledge the legacy that the colonization of much of global South Africa continues to have on how we understand our students and teach them about the world. Previously, disadvantaged groups who are still suffering oppression with the university climate are asking to be seen, acknowledged, heard, consulted, respected. University leaders must be seen to be willing to respect this group, to sit in uncomfortable space and engage with difficult emotional felt by people. So this is the end of our discussions. here our